Thank you all. This is an exciting opportunity. It's the first meeting online, so it's for sure will be a different one, and it will be a very challenging also. So my name is Mladen Milev, and I'm here to present you a way that we work at Infinera, which I call a feature development model. And I'm coming from the software development. I'm personally a software developer. Currently, I manage a group. I have quite some experience in that area already, and I'm also a Lean and DevOps enthusiast. At Infinera, we do a lot of great things, and one of those things, it's a great software. Going further, and before getting into the details of this talk, I would like just to remind something to everybody who has the opportunity to be presented and to look at this talk, and it's about what is success. Because usually we think about success in a way that it is something easy to achieve. You start from point A and you end up in point B, and you're a winner. In fact, it's more like the second line on the right, where you have to go left and right, up and downs, sometimes do a loop, but you have always to keep your direction and your focus. And this is what I really like to focus in my work also. So going further, I'm going to give you some details about the product that I'm working on with my team. So it is a product which it's kind of particular. It's particular in various ways. In one way, it is used by our internal sales and customer support, which are our internal customers. But on the other hand, it is also into the possession of some of our main customers, so they're our external customers. This makes it specific because we have different needs at different moments. When we work with our internal customers, they want it fast. They can sacrifice a little bit on some aspects of the quality, but they really need functionality. On the other hand, when the release goes out, it might end up in the final customer hands, and there you have to have quality, so you have to really balance what and how you do it. Further, this particular product is, as it's supporting the sales, it is enabling the business of the company, and it can influence the revenue. So any mistake you might do can result eventually in impact on the revenue stream on a particular product or product line. So in that sense, it gives a lot of responsibility to us who work on it. And my story begins in the way, in 2015, we received a product which came from the United States, and we introduced it into our company. So it was a product already with about 8 years of development, with a certain feature set and a certain code base. It's a C++ Win32 application. At the time, it had roughly 310,000 lines of code, divided in 500 C++ files or so. And as expected, we started really with a lot of manual work. So it was difficult for us, but it was the only way we could handle it. So we had quite an extensive time to market, if we call it like that. So the time that we had to produce a build, to test it, and then to have the confidence to deliver it to the customers was roughly 25 days. It was a lot. Of course, at that time, I was also considering that it was a good achievement because we were coming from zero. We had almost none knowledge of the code base, so it was like an airdrop of code. The team that was set up was, and it is still relatively small, so it has a fraction of a product manager. There is a system engineer who is responsible, or who was responsible to bring down the content, the requests coming from the product into feature requests. And we had 2 developers and 2 quality assurance personnel. As a total, you can see that this is roughly an R&D team of 5 who was going to execute this product. In Infinera, we're coming from Coriant and from Nokia Siemens and Siemens itself, so we had some kind of extensive knowledge on previous models of work like waterfall. Then we had some agile practices coming from Nokia Siemens, and we're doing a lot of agile. So what we did was relatively straightforward. We started implementing one of the agile practices. So we started thinking about iterations, about incrementally, about evolutionary approaches, and all this started to make sense in the first months. And negotiating with the product, we felt that the product itself and the product manager had different needs. The product manager needed something that does not deliver all the time, but deliver on a timely basis, something like quarterly. And the customers also, they did not want the change all the time, but they wanted a change that they knew that they would receive in a certain period of time. This all caused us a little bit to relax. So what we happened to implement was kind of hybrid agile approach where we would have different features being planned and executed in a certain way, something similar to what I'm representing now on this graphic. So the blue line would be the specification, then the green line is the development, the yellow is the test. So you would scale several features and you would tighten them together. And at a certain point of time, when you get a sufficient content, which the program manager decides, you would make an integration, and then you would make a regression, and you would deliver. At the bottom, I have listed some of the technologies that we have implemented within the product. Of course, we organize with Jira, we use the Git, we started doing C++ tests with Google Test, we have the automation of Jenkins, we put the Sonar to measure our quality of the code, and we started doing automation with the robot framework for the tests. Going forward, all those practices and all those technologies and frameworks help us to improve significantly. So if looking into a period of about 2 years, so you could see that we have managed to increase the technical depth with more than 70%. That was significant. It meant that we're improving the code base. It meant that we're changing the code, and at the same time we were delivering functionality. Another metric that was showing us that we're on the right path was the Sonar Cube code functions, which is indication of how structured is our code. And we were seeing that the number of methods that we are implementing, it's increasing, meaning that we're adding new content and we're dividing functionality into methods. Dividing functionality into methods, it's important because it allows you to further test your code, to isolate and test it. At the same time, we were seeing relatively slight increase on the line of codes. And I'm saying slightly because this was a kind of a trade-off. There was a lot of code, which we call dead code, in the application that came originally, functionality that we're not using, so we've started removing some of this functionality. So the new lines of code are effectively more than the lines that are presented by the total number of codes. So technically, we could see that the project was on a good phase. And starting from the beginning, we felt that there was an increase in our production and increase in our throughput. But over the same period of time of 2 years, between 2015 and 2017, we could observe that we could not deliver in a steady pace. So there were some, after the initial increase, let me take the laser pointer. So after the initial increase in our productivity, then we started having those oscillations, which meant that we are not able to, or that we have reached a certain limit in our delivery throughput. Also, we noticed that there were some functionality that we started implementing, and then we had to shift to a further release. This was naturally seen very negatively by the product manager. We started suffering also some quality issues, and some of those bars here, which each one represents a particular release, the smaller ones like this one, and actually this one, they're a maintenance releases. So you can see that we were starting to make a maintenance release that later almost scale up as a regular release. Of course, there were also escalations coming from the customer once the customer started receiving a release with not that good quality. We were having our retrospective meetings, and the team was indicating that the requests are coming at too high level from the program manager and that there were hidden details. Of course, the team had difficulty to make effort estimations so that we could make an accurate planning, and they indicated that there are a lot of late change requests. On the other hand, the product manager shared with me that there was a difficulty in planning the releases, and the shifting functionality to a following release was actually quite negative, seeing from him and from the customers. And of course, shifting functionality means that he had already agreed to deliver a functionality that he could not deliver, and then the customer expectations would dramatically be impacted. It's a nice question, how it is possible that it is both difficult for the team and difficult for the product manager and difficult for the customers. And if it is difficult, then maybe we should do something about it. One of the things that I have previously worked on in the same company was a model where we were trying to keep our focus on a particular task. And bringing the focus meant that we could do from the beginning to the end on that same task and just close it. And this is what we wanted. This is what we proposed to do. So we proposed to do a feature development model. So the feature development is basically focusing on a feature, and it is very close to some of the agile practices, but it goes a little bit further beyond. If you look at, first of the things that should be noted for that way of work is that there is ownership. So in the ownership, you define that there is a feature responsible. That feature responsible is the owner of a functionality from the beginning to the end. So he is responsible to gather all the requirements, extract them either from the project manager or from the customer, and bring it into the details to be implemented. Then each feature, the way as the feature responsible should design it is in a testable way. In our business, it's actually quite common to have functionality requests that are supporting other functionality requests. So this is a lot of burden. And having as a second line that the feature should be testable, it's really important to be able to deliver it successfully. Also, what we identified as very positive in previous practices was that an initial workshop helped a lot for the understanding of the feature and aligning expectations. Finally, what the ownership defines is that we have to have a final feature delivery workshop where the feature would be also presented to the customer and to the product manager. On the process aspect, we defined some limits which were more from to help the execution than anything else. So each feature is recommended to be no more than a week, hopefully. A feature could be a subset of features, but finally each feature is a subset of work packages, and a work package should be no more than 2 to 3 days. Those limits are really not strict, but they're highly advisable because they help to monitor the progress and to take proactive actions if required. Finally, and something that was very important for us, was that we implemented also a better customer engagement. So we started making some workshops with the customer while developing. We had asked some of our internal customers, part of our customer support and sales, to actually start doing acceptance tests while we're still working on the features. And at the end, when we deliver a release to them, we always do a presentation on the new functionality, which gives them better understanding what they get and how they get it. If we compare the two models, we could do it in this way. So on the top, it's the previously presented model, and on the bottom is the new one. If we assume that to develop a feature, we need the same time, so we could see that if the feature A starts at the same time, according to the second model, it would finish a little bit later than the finish date of the tests in the first model. But ideally would finish much sooner with the integration and with the regression required by this feature. This is important. And this is important because it allows you to take actions, especially when you're managing a project. So it allows you to make a decision. And a decision is, when you reach this point, do you want to deliver or not? Or another decision that you can do is, if you need to make a change in a planned execution, you can do it with minor or no impact. And this is something very powerful. It already happened to us in 2019 because our product requires tests from a laboratory tests. In the lab in Munich, they couldn't make the tests on time. So in 2019, I had started the release, and I had actually reordered the release in the reverse way to execute, so that when I reach the phase where I need the laboratory tests, I would already have given additional 3.5 weeks to the teams in Munich, to the colleagues in Munich. So in the results, I have already used this benefit of this approach, and it had worked for me. Additionally, when the team gets a maturity, you can do a linear scaling. And the linear scaling, it's basically you would divide the capacity of each person, and you have, of course, to work with those persons, and you can ask them to focus on the two tasks, but in a separate way, and then you have to work them to deliver it. Ideally, this would result that you can deliver more content in the same time frame. For us in particular, this resulted in the following way. The minimum time to market decreased significantly. As we actually eliminated the integration and the integration phase into smaller chunks, this meant that our time to market is the regression tests. And when we automated the regression tests, we managed to decrease our time to 2 days, where we would be able to deliver a release to the customer. In fact, in our branching model, we do not have a production branch, but our production is coming directly from master. We implement the functionality in branch, and then we deliver it into the master. This means that anytime that we want a release, we just pick up the release from the master, and we decide if we want to take this release and give it to a customer or not. On the other hand, what we've managed to achieve with this process is we significantly reduced the functionality that we cannot implement within the release, either because we have better understanding or because we have the tools to adapt and still implement it within the release, as I just shared that we did in 2019. If we look at from the functionality, from the features part, so this is the same graphic which we saw before from 2015 to 2017, and then you can see that from 2017, when we did this change and when we gained a little bit trust that it will work, that we're experiencing scaling of the functionality being delivered within the release. Those bars are coming from real projects, and currently we're working on this one, which is number U, and we're into the finishing stage. And for the moment, I'm already planning the next one, which is the number V, with I expect 15 to 16 features in it. Of course, I don't expect that this would be forever. I personally think that the team of 5 is currently a little bit changed according to the initial model. The initial model was 2 developers, 2 tests. Now we're 3 developers and 1 tester with a shared responsibility, so that the developers sometimes help the tests and the tests are highly automated. I believe that we can reach about 16 to 18 features in the release. And at that point of time, we should not work towards increasing the throughput of the team, but we should work towards decreasing the timeline of the release. But that's another topic. What I want to point out here is that we're already far beyond the maximum that we had with the same team size before. As a conclusion, I want to say that by doing those simple, by focusing so simply on the one task, one feature, end-to-end, we've managed to significantly decrease our time to market, and we've managed to increase the functionality we deliver per release. As a result, our stakeholders have higher confidence in our roadmap, and the customer has higher satisfaction. Of course, the team is happier. So, thank you all for the attention, and I'm open if you have any questions.
So it seems like thanks for the talk, first of all. It seems like your new model is based on the complexity of the feature. So in order to keep the numbers, you need to make sure that the feature fits in 2-3 working days. What happens when you have a feature that is more complex than you can fit on that timeline?
Okay, thank you for the answer, for the question. Your feature does not need to be 2 or 3 days. Your work package, so each developer should define work packages that are 2 or 3 days max. And a feature is a sum of several work packages. So a feature, ideally, I would recommend to be about a week, but you can have a feature that it's 2 weeks, divided into different work packages. Now, the problem here is that if you have a feature that it's longer than a week, from my perspective, is that as the developers are very positive, they're always thinking, yes, I'm going to finish on time. And then the work gets more complex and they do creative solutions and they finish as soon as possible, but sometimes later than expected. If you have a feature that it's 1 week, from manager point of view, you could say, I can be delayed 50% and I'll spend to Wednesday. But if your feature is 2 weeks and if you're 50% late, then your feature would span into 3 weeks. Now, the question is also not, are you late or not? The question is, if you need more time, how can I help you get that time and not impact the release? So that's why I think it's really important that we focus on the work packages duration and the work and feature duration. And then if you have a feature with a lot of work packages, naturally someone can raise the question, is it 1 feature or is it 2?
Thank you, Mladen. Anyone else has questions? I don't see any more raised hands. We'll wait a little bit. I know it's a bit more awkward online than if we can see each other's faces, but
yes.
So remember, you go to the participants list, and at the bottom you should see a button saying raise hand if you want to ask a question to Mladen.
In the meantime, I can share you with the following. Our customer teams who are supporting the actual customers, they're using our application, and for them it's really difficult to use it because it's a complex application. And the fact that we've managed to go beyond the R&D structure and bring those customer support teams to work closer with us, actually it's a great help both for us and for them. They understand better how the system works. They understand better how to operate it. And we also understand better what they need, so we don't do unnecessary implementation, or we align our understanding of the functionality and we do it the way that they need it. Because this is what finally matters. How fast are the operations working with it?